All right, welcome to another episode of Daddy's Girl. Today, I'm so honored to share the space with Kori, Hailey, Leila, Sophia, and Sloan, better known in the LA South Bay community as Cory and the Four Daughters. Their family is a huge core in this community because they started the restaurant, the Four Daughters Kitchen, which if you live in the South Bay, you have definitely had a yummy meal there. It's amazing. But today's show is going to be a little bit different because we have the crew with us. So I'm really excited to share this space with you guys.
Thank you.
Are you guys excited to be here?
Yes.
Yeah. So because of this, we're going to have a little bit different of a format. We're going to hear from everybody and whatever you guys want to share. So you guys ready?
Yeah.
Ready. All right. So Kori, tell me why it was so important for you to marry a family guy and how stellar of a dad he was for you guys.
Actually, that's pretty easy. I did not have a father figure growing up who was a part of our family, but I did get a taste of what a good father was because I was raised with my grandparents for a while, and I became very close with my grandfather. We called him Dadu. And ironically, I did live with him for 5 years, so I got a taste of that for 5 years, but he did die of a heart attack when I was in 5th grade. So I had, I feel like that age was very, in that growing stage was very, I could see what I wanted from that age, at a young age. And so, and starting at a young girl, I think it might have even been a little bit subconscious what I felt I wanted as I grew up in a man, in a father, in a husband. And the day I did meet Clint, I knew right away. I knew from the one amazing hug he gave me in the very first evening that we met. And at that point, I really didn't even think that it could really happen because as I got to know him more and more, he was everything that I had dreamed of as a young girl. And the thought of it really coming true that he would be my husband and the father to my children, I had a lot of doubts. But luckily I was wrong. And 3 years later, we were married.
That's incredible. And your dad was such a legacy and a pillar in this community. Can you guys tell me what it was like growing up being a daddy's girl to Clint Clausen?
Well, he joked around a lot. He was really funny and messed with us a lot.
Well, he had this one thing, if I could share like a mini memory.
Yeah.
He had this one thing that he pretended he was a magician, and us being very young thought it was true. And I don't know, that just amazed us. We were like, holy crap, that's crazy. And then one day he invited Hailey to being like a wizard or a magician too. And I got so mad, and I was just waiting for that one day for me to become one too.
I love that. Do you have one memory, fond memory, or?
Oh, I have one.
Oh, there we go.
I'd always go with him to the restaurant because he'd always need help, and so he'd always have me fill up the ice buckets, and then we'd go in the car, and then he'd play the music really loud and like drive really fast, and it like scared me, and I'd get really mad at him. But it was funny, like thinking back now. So yeah.
I love the fighting over the mic. This is great.
When we were younger, I think, like, I don't really know how to explain it, but if we were, like, mad at him, like, he'd just, like, laugh, and, like, if we were crying, like, of course he'd help us, but he'd just be, like, over there, like, all happy, and, like, as Hailey said, when we were driving in the car, like, sometimes we'd be crying in the back, and he'd just be like, hey, come on, have some fun, and he was always just, like, the positive energy in the house, and kind of just,
He also calmed down Mom a lot because she'd get crazy.
Yeah.
That's true.
Did you guys ever gang up on him? Oh, go for it. Because you guys outnumbered him.
No, I feel like we were mostly on
we could not do that.
Well, unless he was mad at us, then we'd run to Mom. But besides that,
I do have to say too, if anybody should have 4 daughters, it should have been Clint because of his calm, his sense of humor. I mean, there's a lot going on in the house. Even our dog was a girl. So if anybody could handle it, I really think he was the one who could.
That's
with his
amazing.
sense of humor, with his calmness.
I remember like if we were like out right next to the restaurant, Sophia and I, we would go up to him and we'd be like, "Dad, we're cold or we're hungry," and he'd be like, "Nice to meet you, I'm Clint." So he would
That's so cute.
But I remember like nothing would really make him cross that line because he'd always be like calm, but also like just in like at a like Mom would sometimes kind of get up here, but then he would always just stay right here and like, you know, like as I said, like the positive energy and everything.
That's awesome.
He was also very competitive in pretty much everything, even though like my sport, he'd still being competitive about it and like always like Shisa talk, and so we're pretty good at Shisa talking.
And what's your sport?
Oh, well, volleyball, but I quit last year, so.
I don't know.
We can go on to the next question.
Okay.
Unless you guys, is there anything else you want to share about him being a stellar dad? We'll have lots of time to talk. Okay.
I became a yoga instructor. Basically, what I learned in my practice and in instructing is what he just had naturally.
That's incredible.
I'm the yoga instructor. He was the yogi. I can honestly say now.
That's awesome. And tell me about the experience leading up to his passing and the emotional shock that it took on your family, on you guys, on the community. What was that like?
So we were going on our meeting up in South Carolina for a big family reunion with my sister and my younger brother. And we hadn't seen each other basically in 6 years because we're all scattered out. And so the cousins, some of them were meeting each other for the first time. And we went to Isle of Palms and we rented this big house and we had the most amazing week. I mean, looking back, it couldn't have ended, on a higher note if there was a high note.
Sure.
And it was actually the last night we were there. And I was packing, getting ready to go. And as I was running around frantically, because I got to keep everything organized and get everything packed, he yelled at me from in the room that he was sitting. Him and my brother were watching a game or something. And he's like, "Hey, Mommy, come sit on my lap." Because he always called me Mommy. I called him Daddy ever since the kids were born. That's just the way it was, no matter how strange that might have sounded to anybody else. It was normal to us. And so my first instinct was, I got to finish this. I got to get this done. But something inside of me listened. And so I went and sat on his lap. And we were sitting there talking and laughing. And I was kind of getting comfortable. And I was laying against his arm and sitting on his lap. And he looks at me and he's like, "So are you comfortable?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm really comfortable." And it struck me kind of weird because I was just like, wow. I didn't, everything was just, we were just talking and having fun. So within probably 3 minutes, I felt his chest take a big puff and then totally just collapse. And his arm that was holding me fell to the side. And because he was such a prankster and he joked around a lot, I thought he was kidding. And I looked back at him and he didn't move. And then I looked at my brother and then we knew something was wrong.
Wow.
So right then, everything just kicked in. Everything became chaotic. But my two brothers just worked profusely to revive him. But it was instant. I knew it was at the time, even though it was hard to accept.
Sure.
And, the girls were all there. They knew something was happening, but they didn't know exactly what.
Got it.
So that evening was rather rough evening, and when I came home in the middle of the night, I gathered all of them around and told them what had happened. And I think, as you know, it's not realistic. I think you're numb, and so it took some time. None of it set in to any of them that night, and so I had to tell them again in the morning.
Sure.
And then that day was the first day I realized, wow, life goes on. Everything to me and to them stopped.
Sure.
And so it was a weird realization to like look around going, wait a minute, we still have to go on now.
Yeah.
What do we do now? We have things to do. And so life started at that point and again. And so it took some time.
Yeah. And that's why when I heard your story, I felt instantly connected to you guys because I lost my dad to a heart attack. And it was not the same experience, but one of those things that when it happened, in my world just stopped. And I felt like, I was going at a sloth or a turtle's pace, but everybody was still doing their life things. And I'm like, I can barely get out of bed. And then I realized, because that was my first big loss, and he was my hero. And my dad was, super funny and comical and larger than life and never got mad. He was very emotionally just like up here. And for me, starting the show was wanting to hear you guys' stories because now I know it's a story of triumph. But I know how much it's a struggle, and people don't realize that you grieve for the rest of your life. You learn how to kind of move on, but your grief still goes on every day. Like I saw you tearing up, and I tear up sometimes just thinking about my dad. And even though it's been years, he was such a huge role in my life. When did the realization really sink in for you guys?
It definitely took me a long time because I remember like the first day after everything had happened, like, we went to the mall, got some haircuts, stayed the extra day in South Carolina. And
we had photos that day too. We're taking photos that day.
No, we took photos the day before.
We took photos that day.
No, we didn't.
We took our family photos the night before. Luckily we had them.
Yeah, but it definitely took a while. I'd say like, because if it was August 8th, it probably took me like a year or so just to fully realize like what we're gonna do without him, or like how we're just gonna like go on with our lives and like not let that just like stop us. It's just a big bump in the road and like everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then what was it like going into the school year?
It was definitely like pretty overwhelming because we know a lot of people in this town. So,
right.
I mean, luckily I was younger, so it wasn't like that much of an impact, but like knowing like a lot of families and stuff and people like going up to me, and it was like very sweet. Like I really appreciated it, but it was like hit me more because I was like, dang it.
Trying to get on with your day, and then someone kind of reminds you of something that's already like looming over you.
Yeah. I mean, it was very nice of them. It was just like hard, like thinking it like
it just brings the reality in, like, that did happen.
I've always felt like it wasn't like a certain point where I realized like I know like he passed away. It's always been like it's different now. Like yeah, exactly. When I went into school, it did take a while, kind of like seeing other families together and kind of remembering when he would like, play with us and all of that. So yeah, it was hard going into school, and but I've always kind of been like, oh yeah, like he's
because it comes back and you realize things
and it like it's like a lot of things just kind of like trigger that memory and like kind of bring it up, and like you can get sad really easily about it. So yeah.
When we were even talking, I'll let you talk, but when we were talking, how I've noticed all these things that align, almost serendipitous, even though it doesn't feel serendipitous, but that we almost filmed yesterday, which would have been the anniversary. Yeah. Now we're filming a day later, and it's just like all these little things that just kind of align, and you're like, wow, this is weird. Yeah. Like, and you just get all these different feelings, like kind of smiling, kind of heavy, kind of remembering, like all of those things. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you want to say something, Sloan?
Well, I was like really confused because everyone was like crying like the day, but I was really young, so I didn't really understand.
How old were you?
I was like about 6.
Wow.
Oh, she was 6?
Mm-hmm. And how old were the rest of you guys?
I was 8.
12.
That means I was
10. Yeah. They're about 2 years apart.
And now where you guys are at now, which is the beauty of what I think happens, you know, trying to see that positive side of things, much like it sounds like Kori, that you've talked about with your husband, is where you guys are at now and how you've really picked up the pieces and are doing not only things for yourself, but also the community. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I did realize, I mean, even the first couple of years, like to myself, I would say, oh, you should be over this by now. You know, you don't want to burden anybody with, you know, how you feel, or I always, you know, try to make other people comfortable because it's always something that's uncomfortable.
Sure.
And it took me a few years to realize, like, well, no, you will never really get over this. It's
Right.
always something's going to come up with all of them and with myself that realize, wow, he's not here.
Right.
It's such a strange thing to still be saying that. 5 years he hasn't been here, but I still do. And I know they do as well. Sorry, baby. And
You guys are doing great.
but there's always a silver lining. And talking, if you want to talk about the heart screenings and the volleyball tournament,
Yeah.
that was something that Clint loved volleyball. He was very into sports. He played basketball at UNLV, but then I find out later that really he loved volleyball more than he loved basketball. And they used to play volleyball on the weekends all the time. And so as soon as probably about 3 weeks after he passed, a group that he played with came knocking on my door, and they said, how about throwing a volleyball tournament to raise money for the Girls 529 Educational Fund? So at that very moment, we're all standing there, and I was like, well, that sounds great, but I have no idea how to throw a volleyball tournament. I'm not a party planner at all.
Right.
So there was just a very small group of us. Everybody kind of band together, pulled together, and within 1 month, we put together this volleyball tournament at the Manhattan Beach Pier. We had to move it there because of the amount of people that signed up.
That's incredible.
I was really, really blown away, actually. I didn't know what to expect. And the day of it, I was just looking around, and I was just so amazed and what it turned out to be. And then through that, by the next year, I thought, okay, we should probably do this again, but let's maybe bring another, you know, part of it. And that's when I teamed up with Little Company of Mary and the American Heart Association, and found out about these amazing heart screenings through a friend of mine who actually let me go in and get one. And literally sitting there on the table getting this heart screening done, I was like, wow, Clint would be here right now had he had this. So I was a little bit angry. I mean, it was all right there, this
Sure.
echocardiogram. I mean, everything, this very, you know, informative heart screening. And
Right.
so that was it. At that moment, I'm like, okay, let's do a volleyball tournament this year, half spreading awareness,
Okay.
raising money for these heart screenings for the less fortunate, and then raising money for the 529 fund. And so we're actually getting ready for the 6th year.
That's incredible.
So that is basically the silver lining, because I cannot tell you how many emails, phone calls, texts I've gotten just in this community, finding out nobody even knew that the heart screenings were done right here, like 2 minutes up the road. So not only people in the community were going and getting it done and saying, hey, Kori, I had a heart screening and thanks so much, and
That's
you know,
incredible.
passing it on, but then actually being able to allow, you know, less fortunate to get them. So, I mean, that's a good feeling.
I
right?
know. You guys are giving back to the community, and you guys turned something very tragic and personal into something that is now beautiful and a legacy. And I'm sure if Clint was anything like my dad, it would be like, yes, you know, don't worry about me. You guys, you know, pick up, smile, do your best, and let's help other people out. And that's incredible that we're going on year 5, right? Six of the volleyball tournament. That's
Yes.
amazing. And what else? Because you guys have a couple other things going on. Tell me about that. The volleyball tournament is huge, and that's October 12th
October 12th, Saturday.
in Manhattan Beach.
Pier.
right? And they're still looking for sponsors and donations and anything like that. I'll have the information in the bio. So if anybody wants to donate or be a part of that, celebrity, anything, yeah, you guys would love that. And what else do you have going on?
So I did write a book, which is really strange for me to even say, because I never in a million years thought I would write a book. And basically, I probably ignored the signs to do so for a couple of years, because I thought, I kept on getting little things, just write, just sit down and write, just sit down and write. But I was like, why would I sit down and write? That just seems so hard. I don't want to have to think about anything. There's enough going on. Right. And then one day, seriously, I thought, okay, I'm just going to sit down, start writing. And I realized it's amazing what happens when you write from your heart and not from your head. And the feelings and the emotions and the words just came. And I would never have believed that had it not, happened to me myself. So I just decided every day I'm going to sit down for about an hour and a half is basically what I could do. Because the minute I started to think, then I would stop. And then the next day I would sit down again. And after about 4 or 5 months, I thought to myself, this could be a book. I mean, it was that random. So I just kept on going with it. And after I went as far as I could and then reached out to somebody who, again, serendipitously, I think, came into my path.
Right.
And he's a editor, ghostwriter, and I sent some information to him, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but maybe you could tell me. And so we got together, and he's helped me edit it and ghostwrite, and finish it off. And now we are actually got it out there looking for a publisher or literary agent. We've got the whole pitch and everything. So
we need a sponsor. We need a sponsor to the tournament, and we need
a literary agent or a publisher.
There we go.
That would be fabulous.
Yeah. So with closing the show, I normally ask, if your dad was here now, what would you say to him? You guys can or can't answer if you feel comfortable, if you don't. Does anybody want to start? You can go, Leila, since you have the microphone.
Yeah, one second. I gotta think for a second.
Okay.
I can say something while she's thinking.
Okay.
I don't need the microphone.
Oh, right.
He loved attention.
Okay.
So all the attention that he's getting from the volleyball tournament, from the podcast, from the book, anytime his name is out there, I know he loves it. He was a storyteller, and the bigger the group to listen, the more his stories got bigger, his head got bigger. So after getting a big hug from him, I would just probably sit back and just look at his smile and just love to listen to another one of his stories.
Wow, that's a good
So
answer.
I would do that.
Well, if he were here now, I think I'd say, thank you for teaching me to be strong and tough love.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I think especially being a female, we have to, like you guys have already done, pick yourself up and keep moving forward and staying positive. And so I know he's really proud of you guys for even just being here today, and throwing the tournament and helping other people out. You guys are a really good example of being tough and strong and positive and moving forward. I love it. But also remembering
we want to make
and grieving.
him proud.
Yeah.
We want to make him proud, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely hard talking about this, but for all families out there, I think we really want to make people aware that it's pretty easy to get a heart screening, because it's really hard seeing other people go through these things when it's really out there. So we hope people take this into consideration, because it'd be something really good.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Good. That's really good.
That's very true. That's how I feel. It's there's so many methods to prevent things and signs, and getting regular testing is just, it's an easy answer. And you guys have made it so easy for the community to do that.
So kind of like what Leila first said, but I feel like I definitely say thank you, because I feel like he definitely knew how to raise kids, because he taught us like to be independent and, you know, be able to do like things by ourselves, you know, and so I'm really glad that I was able to have him as my dad, because he was just
A good role model.
yeah, good role model.
He's a good guy.
I wouldn't really know what to say. I would probably just hug him and like never want to let go.
Yeah. That's a good answer too. Hailey, you're gonna pass? Okay. Well, I am so grateful to have you guys here.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. We're honored.
yeah.
We really are.
And like I said, I want you guys, I think you guys have just done a huge example of letting other people know that, you know, if people have gone through what we have, that there's someone out there for them that understands. Because I think for me, that was the hardest thing. When my dad passed away, I was the first of my friends that had lost their father, you know, one of their parents. Yeah. And it's just like, I wish there was this resource where I could hear other people's stories so that they understood that they weren't alone, and be a good example. Because right now you guys are being a great example to your friends of being strong, independent, positive, but also having grief in your life, but being able to move forward with that. So I'm really grateful to have you guys here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. And that was, I think this is episode 6 of Daddy's Girl. But I've got Kori and the 4 daughters, and that's it. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having us.
Yeah. That's a wrap.